This episode of Building You is brought to you by PageFlip. Not going to in-person trade shows this year and still need to get your catalogs out to those distributors? Upload your digital catalog to Promo Corner's PageFlip. Contact sales at promocorner.com.
Hi guys, I'm so excited to be here. This is our third session with Building You. And if you don't know me yet, my name is Kat. My whole purpose is to bring positivity, energy, whatever it takes to help people to become their best you, hence Building You. And I do it by transcending between personal and business. And the last two programs that we had, one was based on gratitude, one was based on falling into kind of these traps that capture us and don't allow us to reach our full potential. Today's program is a little bit different because it's less focused on business. However, it can apply to business, and it's more focused on our daily lives. And actually what today's topic is how to communicate in a stressful situation. Now, I want to start this by saying that a couple of weeks ago, I was yelling at my husband. Now, I wasn't yelling at him because he was doing anything wrong, which happens sometimes, of course, but I was yelling at him, just kind of being snarky and short and kind of abrasive towards him because I'd had a heated conversation actually with my ex-husband. So this other situation that was stressful for me overflowed and made me not the person I should be for somebody that I care about, somebody that doesn't deserve it. Now, I'm very lucky because I have a very understanding husband and he understood what I was going through. However, if we don't handle our stressful situations, our communications with people with grace, what can happen is that our anxiety gets up and our blood pressure rises and we're frustrated. And we let that trickle into other situations like our husband or our children or a coworker or a boss, or the worst thing that you can allow a stressful communication to affect is a client, right? They don't deserve that. And we're trying to support them. So today's focus is how to communicate in stressful situations. Like I said, this can help you personally or professionally. And we're going to go through it in 3 steps. There are 3 parts to communication. First, we have a speaking part, right? Then we have a listening part, and then we have a response traditionally. So there's 3 parts to how we're going to manage our communication in a stressful situation. But the very first thing, and we're going to go back to this in every section, is how to calm ourselves in a stressful situation. And if you've watched either one of my last episodes, this breathing technique is so necessary in your life. You have to incorporate it into your life because it is going to help your body to calm down. Because our bodies are designed to be reactive. We are designed to protect ourselves in very scary, life-threatening situations. And our body does not know the difference between a life-threatening situation, like back in the olden days, a saber-toothed tiger or a car accident or something stressful happening around us, versus somebody annoying us or stressing us out. Because what happens is our body is going to respond by protecting us, by keeping us safe and getting us to survive. And what happens is that our body shuts down all of the non-essential parts of our body so that we can react in a self-preservation way. So one of those things that shuts down is our brain. Because when we're in a life-threatening situation, we don't have to really think, we just have to escape. So if our brain is shutting down when we're in a stressful situation, what's going to happen? We're going to react the wrong way in a communication situation. So we're going to get right into it. So the very first part is to speak carefully. Now there's a few sections here. The first part is that when we're communicating with people, we have to be specific. If you're angry about something, or if you have to approach somebody at work or personally with something that's kind of rubbing you the wrong way, we cannot expect people to be mind readers. Have you ever been past a situation and when you look back at how you communicated, realized, I could have done that a little bit differently. I could have been more specific so they understood, or even if somebody's communicating with you, had they been more specific and clearer with their communication, you might have gotten it and been able to help that situation better. So what you want to do is to specifically define a problem or to name a feeling. So when you're speaking specifically, you have to make sure that you're defining exactly how you're feeling so that people can understand it. Don't leave them guessing, because it's not their job to understand what's going on inside of our heads. That's the first part. The second part of speaking carefully, and throw away the key, stop talking. If your emotions are rising, if you can feel that heat building within you, and you know just by that physiological response that your body is having that you're not going to be able to think clearly, zip it. Stop talking, because sometimes we need to take that break. Because what happens is that when we're stressed, or even when we're overtired, if you're not getting enough sleep, you're going to be extra irritated by situations around you. So by when we're tired or a little bit extra stressed, we tend to say things that we don't mean. That's happened to me. I don't know if it's happened to you, but it does happen. And what happens is that we can exaggerate or escalate a situation to a magnitude that is beyond reality. Many times when we're stressed out, we do a thing called catastrophizing. And this is something that it's a cognitive disorder. And it is when we take things, you've heard the expression, make a mountain out of a molehill. When we're stressed out and we're not able to control the stress that's rising inside of our body, we make things much bigger than they actually are. So it's very important to really pay attention to your body and to stop talking if your emotions are starting to get the best of you. The third part of speaking carefully is to stay focused. We have to discuss only the issues at hand. Have you ever been in an argument or a situation? And I have found that this happens much more personally than it ever does professionally, because most of the times in professional situations, when an issue arises, it might be stressful, but we can kind of get past it. But with emotional situations with people that we care about, many times we never resolve the situation and we bury it. And what happens is then something else triggers, and then we go back and we start complaining or talking about these past issues. That's not cool, because it's very confusing and it's irritating, because if I'm over it, you should be over it, right? So when we're communicating, we want to stay focused only on the issue at hand. Now, if we can learn how to communicate through these stressful situations in an appropriate way, we won't have to worry about those past issues coming up again, because we're going to resolve them every single time. So that's good. So make sure that you don't say things that you don't mean or threaten things that you have no intention on following through. This used to happen to me with my children, because if you have children, you know that they can push buttons like nobody else can. I think that spouses can do the same thing. But what happens is that we get frustrated and we might threaten a discipline that we really, like if we're threatening grounding a child for a month, but we know we're never going to stick to that, don't say it, because the worst thing that we can do is make promises that we don't keep, because that is going to create a familiar pattern, and you don't want to do that. So only discuss the issues at hand, and don't allow the issues to become old issues, and make sure that you're focusing on exactly the things that you want to say, not the things that you shouldn't say. And then the last part of speaking carefully is to say it with tact. I remember my sister said to me once that she and her husband used to fight a lot. And she used to say that one thing that she always did was fight fair. Now, the importance of fighting fair is about not losing your moral disposition and not becoming nasty and mean. Make sure that you're being descriptive and not critical. I want to repeat that. When we're speaking, we have to be descriptive and not critical. When I do my programs, I usually do them for my mom like the week before. And when I was doing this program for her, she said, "Oh, descriptive, not critical. You can think about DC. It's during election time. And if you think about, if people spoke, politicians especially, with description instead of being critical towards one another, maybe this country could be further ahead. So it's the same thing with us. Make sure that you are descriptive and not critical when you're speaking. Don't blame people and be all-knowing, because that's irritating too. So just be specific, be clear on your communication, avoid criticism or sarcasm, and understand that I statements are less threatening than you statements. I'm feeling a certain way about this particular situation, as opposed to you are making me feel a certain way, because nobody can make you feel a certain way. You choose to feel that way. Now, it might be a situation that's happening with somebody else, but always use your I statements instead of you statements, because when you start to push, people are generally going to push back. I used to do an exercise when I was doing live programs, and you stand next to somebody with your hands against each other. And the exercise is that one person is told to push against that other person's hands. And inevitably in this exercise, what would happen is the other person just naturally would be pushing back to hold that kind of barrier, if you will. But if that other person releases their hands and allows that person to push forward, it's going to be a more communicative situation. So I statements instead of you statements. Don't push, because they're going to push back. Okay, so that's the first start. We're going to speak carefully. The second part is to listen attentively. Now, this is where I fall into my biggest challenge. The first part of this is to receive criticism successfully. Well, what does that mean? When we're in stressful situations, many times what happens is our emotions get the best of us. So what you want to do is think of yourself as like, an old gold miner. You want to filter out anger and fear, because those are the two things that make us get most defensive. And if you can, hopefully you'll be in a situation with somebody else that's watching this video, because then they'll know to be descriptive instead of criticizing. But if they're not watching this video, it's very likely they're not going to understand how to communicate properly under stress. So it's up to us to rise above and filter out and not allow their words to hurt us or to scare us, because then we're going to become emotional. It's going to be harder for us to keep it cool. The second thing you want to do is just don't interrupt. This is where my biggest thing is. What happens is that when people are talking to us, we start to form answers in our head. We start to either have a rebuttal or have an explanation or try to fix the situation. And when we're doing that, when we're forming our own conclusions on what they're saying, we're not listening to everything that they're saying. Now, this video is about communicating under stress, but understand communication in general is the most important thing that we can do for every relationship that we have. So if you can apply this, even when you're not under stress, just if somebody is talking to you in a regular way, listen to what they're saying, accept what it is said, hear everything, just stop and hear what they're saying. And actually, what you want to do is pay attention to their non-verbal cues, because many of us talk with words, but you can read a person's body language, and a lot of times it says a lot more than the words that they're saying. So make sure that when you're communicating with people, and especially when they're communicating with you, when they're having their talk time, put away your phone. Get rid of distractions, because number one, even if you can multitask, even if you can look at your messages or whatever is beeping on your phone and think that you're hearing the person that's talking to you, it's very rude. And it's just not a cool way to especially be in a stressful situation. So eliminate your distractions, hear what they're saying, and accept what is said without giving advice or input until they're completely done. The third thing is to listen with empathy. And this is probably my favorite thing that I've learned about communication, because I've always thought that if I can understand where somebody's coming from, it means I have to agree with them. But guess what? It doesn't. You can understand how a person feels without agreeing with the situation or even with how they feel. Understanding is not agreeing. So make sure that you can hear somebody with an empathetic heart, change your perspective and just kind of see where they're coming from so that you can resolve whatever the situation is. And then the last part is to make sure you get all the facts. This goes back to that descriptive. Now, we've talked about being descriptive when we communicate. If somebody is communicating with you and you don't understand what they're saying, ask them. Ask them to clarify. Be humble about it. I don't understand. Please be more descriptive, because if you're not getting all the facts, you also cannot help the situation. So that's how we listen attentively. And then the last part of speaking and, managing our stressful situations is to respond accurately. So the first part of responding, it's to be honest. Guys, always be honest. And this goes back to, we were talking about being emotional, and we were talking about if you don't understand what they're saying. If you do understand what they're saying, tell them, I understand what you're saying. I can understand where you're coming from. Again, you don't have to agree with them, but be honest about how you're hearing them and where you want to go from there. The second part is to check your interpretations. Now, the most important part of communication is mutual understanding. That's why we're going through each step very, very carefully. We speak first, we listen next, and then we're going to respond again, because we want to make sure that we mutually understand each other. Any communication in a good situation or in a stressful situation is still a two-way street, right? We have to hear each other and we have to understand each other. So check what your interpretations are simply by saying, let me repeat back to you what I think I'm hearing. We all speak differently, and it's important for you to speak back what you think you're hearing in your own words. Don't just repeat back what they said, because you still might not understand it. But if you can put it into your words, they're going to hear it through your backing, right? How you understand things. And maybe it's not how they meant for you to understand it. So you need to make sure that your interpretation of what they're saying is accurate by simply repeating it back. And then the last part is to listen to yourself. Now, this is really, really big, because I know people that it doesn't matter what they're saying, when they're saying it, or what the circumstance is, they kind of sound like a jerk. There's other words that I could use there, but I can't on this video. They sound like a jerk. It's like resting jerk face. It's resting voice face. So you want to hear what you sound like. You need to make a conscious effort to hear how you sound. Are you positive? Are you negative? What is your tone of voice? If you are snarky, like if you're having these snappy responses, even if it's your normal tone of voice, it's going to put your other person totally up in arms. I always like to think about communicating with a child. When we speak to a child, we do it in a way, in a tone, and breaking down the words in a way that they can understand us. And if you can think to do that, especially in stressful situations, it will help you get to the other side. I used to tell my children, I have children that are only a year apart, which of course meant that they fought a lot. They're teenagers now and they still fight. And I used to always tell my son, who the poor guy used to always be on the short side. My daughter was kind of the resting voice face. And I used to say, honey, nobody likes to fight with themselves. Listen, if somebody's coming at you, kill them with kindness, because nobody likes to fight with themselves. And if you can keep that in mind, if you can keep that even tone, deep breathe when you need to. When we deep breathe, we talked earlier about how we have this response, but by deep breathing, our belly breathing is the same kind of breathing when we're sleeping. And when we're sleeping, we feel safe and secure. If we can deep breathe, we are telling our body we are safe. We are not in a stressful situation, which allows us to connect back to our brain so we can grab the things that we've learned and communicate in a thoughtful manner so that we can respond as opposed to react when somebody else might be coming at us in an abrasive way. So to review, The 3 steps to communicating in a stressful situation. The first one is to speak carefully. And remember, we want to be specific. Make sure you are descriptive. Say less. Lock it up if you need to take that breath and allow yourself to get back to your Zen. Stay focused on the here and now without bringing back past stories or situations, and say it with tact, which means fight fair. Number 2, we're going to listen. We're going to listen by receiving criticism successfully. If somebody has something to say, hear what they're saying, because you know what? Maybe we don't even realize the situations that we're in. Maybe something can be our fault, but we have to hear it, because sometimes we just don't even know. We're so busy. Don't interrupt. Put down your phone, get rid of those interruptions, and hear what people are saying. Listen with empathy and get all the facts. If you do not feel like you have all the facts, ask the right questions. And then the last bit is to respond accurately. Be honest with these people. Make sure that you check your interpretations. Mutual respect, mutual understanding is the way that we're going to get to the end of a stressful situation. And then the last part is to listen to yourself. Don't be snarky. Just be in it. Be calm. Be cool. Remember, deep breathe if you need to. And no matter what, don't allow yourself to let one stressful encounter roll or trickle into an encounter that doesn't deserve it, because if you do, that too may become stressful. So now is the time to allow ourselves to be peaceful and get ready for this exciting season that's coming up, and just manage it with grace. So that's all I've got for you today, guys.